back to Globalogs. So today is the first day that we're going to start delving into one of our narratives here on Globalogs. So we're just going to get right to it then. The first narrative that we're going to be looking at on Globalogs concerns Venezuela, and we're calling it here Political and Economic Stability in Venezuela and the Future of the Bolivarian Revolution, or sometimes the Bolivarian Republic. It's officially the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So what do we mean by this? What's all that about? Well, Venezuela, there it is, as we saw, on the Caribbean coast of South America, home of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, over 500 billion barrels. Was at one point home of the highest standard of living in Latin America, with a cosmopolitan elite that was admired throughout the region. Used to be one of the most steadfast allies of the United States in the world. And yet, if we look at it now, on foreign policy, it seems to enjoy rather instead thumbing its nose at the United States. Changed, of course, there a little bit. We've got hyperinflation, or if not hyperinflation, at least really bad inflation, I believe is the technical term. Significant protests against a government that was not too terribly long in the past viewed as kind of a bulwark of mostly successful liberal democracy in the region. We've got clampdowns on outside speech that the regime doesn't like. How did we get from, there to there? And what does all it mean? And what does it likely portend for the future? So what we're going to do over the next 8 episodes, including this one, is kind of trace the story back a little bit to the beginning, like to the discovery of oil in the 1920s. How did that play out? Who was involved? What were the Punto Fio Accords, and how did they pave the way for Hugo Chavez? There he is. We're going to be seeing a lot of him. How did they pave the way for Hugo Chavez's election in '99 and then re-election in 2006? Or, well, first, not 2000, then 2006, then 2012, and the whole series of restructurings of Venezuelan state and society that he put under the umbrella of the Bolivarian Revolution, harkening back to the great Latin American independence hero Simón Bolívar. And what did he leave after his death in 2013? And what is his successor, Nicolás Maduro, doing to handle what is left afterwards? Venezuela, being pretty definitively a petrostate, has its politics and economics and society tied up completely with the resource. You cannot talk about Venezuela without talking about oil. It is completely dominant. And so we're going to spend an episode looking at the oil industry itself, its origins, how foreign powers were involved or not involved, how Venezuela nationalized the industry to its current form in the 70s, how the oil has influenced its foreign policy both before and then after Chavez. We'll talk about the Petrocaribe program that's still going on. We will talk about how Chavez restructured internal social programs as part of his 21st century socialism, what the origins of this were, the strains of this were, and how it's playing out now. We will discuss the foreign relations of Venezuela and their shift in that period, and go a little bit further and examine what the situation is now in Venezuela. How did we end up in an election where the people take to the streets like that in a country that used to be seen as a pretty stable, relatively liberal democracy? These kinds of things don't just happen overnight. They take time, and they're the consequence of choices that people make compounded over years and decades. And Venezuela still plays a very prominent role in the international oil industry, and the United States continues to buy a great deal of oil from Venezuela. In fact, a lot of the refineries, the Gulf of Mexico coast, are set up specifically to process Venezuelan crude. And so the Venezuelans also play a outsized role in Latin American politics, very much also as a consequence of what's been going on with now late Hugo Chavez. So, but how all this translates into regime stability, can the Venezuelan regime that's been set up since 1999 under Chavez and his successor Maduro endure or not? Will it become something more autocratic? Will it become something more liberal? And how does that affect Latin America's relationship with the U.S.? How does it affect Venezuela's relationship with OPEC and OPEC's relationship with other countries? How does China get involved? All of these questions and more we'll take a look at. How did the various choices made over the course of the last 15, 30, 50 years shape the Venezuela that we have today, and what might happen over the next few years to shape the Venezuela and the Latin America and the Western Hemisphere that we will see henceforward into the third decade of the 21st century. So that's our intro to the Venezuela piece. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time when we talk about the Venezuelan oil industry. Bye-bye.